Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about differentiating, meeting your student where they are in the classroom. Stay tuned. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Sometimes when you're in the classroom, no matter what level you're teaching, you get a student and you realize, whoa, this is too hard for that student. And that is quite a possibility because sometimes it might be this is the first class with you. Maybe they're just a little shy. Maybe for whatever reason, despite other teachers' recommendations, they've continued to move on through the unit. So for a student that is having a difficult time, one thing that you can do is to break it into smaller chunks. Now it depends on what part of the lesson that you're in with VIPKID or any online company that you're with. But one of them is if there's a lot of reading, then circle part of it and put numbers like 1 and 2. Like, do you want to read 1 or 2? And let them choose. Maybe even that's too much. Maybe we need to break it down and like you read this sentence, I read this sentence. Sometimes just taking a little bit of that pressure off of them helps them to relax a little bit, especially if it's the first class with you. Now, this is also good because it gives them an opportunity to hear a native English speaker reading. So they hear the pace, the rhythm, the intonation, so that they can try and match that when they get a chance to read or to practice later. Now, while they are supposed to be able to read most of the slides in the upper levels, as you have experienced, that's not always the case. So maybe just you read a couple of them and let them focus on the skill of the verb. Because on those slides, yes, they're supposed to be reading it, but the most important skill from that slide is the verb. Another thing that you can do is make sure you are understanding what that slide is asking. Because we get so caught up, I do anyway, I get so caught up in, all right, this is an upper level, they're supposed to be reading the whole slide. But that isn't necessarily the case. If it's a grammar slide, if it's a vocabulary slide, that's what I want my main focus to be. So if I know that they're a struggling reader, for example, then maybe I read some of it to them. But if it's the grammar slide, maybe I read the sentence and you focus on choosing the correct verb or the correct phrase or the correct conjunction or whatever it happens to be. Because for that particular slide, what's most important is that you're understanding the grammar part of it and not stumbling over the words on that one. Now, perhaps you're not in an upper level. Perhaps you are in a level 2 and it's still too hard. Well, level 2, make sure you go back and look. Isn't supposed to be able to read the slides. I know that you may have gotten a lot of level 2s that can do that. I know there was a chunk of time where I had all readers and they could read amazing. But that's not always the case, and that's not the expectation for level 2. So always double check those. In that case, if they are just in the listening phase and the copying and mimicking you phase, that is okay because they hear how it's supposed to sound. They are copying how it's supposed to sound. So that with that repetition, they'll get there. If that's the case, then just keep mimicking back and forth. Throughout the class, see if they can try some on their own. After you've done a couple of examples of let me grab my colors for an example. It is red. And then have them repeat. It is red. Good. It is red. Yeah, good job. What color is it? It is, yes, red. Now we know that's the modeling. You model and then eventually you let go. But some students need to do that a little bit longer. Maybe you won't be able to let go in that first lesson. It might be the second lesson, or it might be way at the end of the lesson. Try and come back to it, especially if you seem to be moving quickly because all they're doing is mimicking, then maybe save a little time at the end for that. If you're a new teacher, this is going to seem super overwhelming. So you just need to, and then take it slow. Focus on one thing and not all of these suggestions. Another way to scaffold in the lower levels to lower it down is, say in level 2 they have a really long sentence. Maybe it is the shirt is orange and white. Maybe that's too long of a sentence for them. Break it into those chunks. Make it smaller. The shirt is orange and white. Good. The shirt is orange and white. I had a student that I was working on those longer sentences. She did fine in those chunks, but trying to say that whole one, I kept losing her. So that's one way to scaffold down. Now, what do you do if you're in a level 2 and your student is reading all of the slides in like 2 seconds and you were like, I'm going to be done in like 5 minutes? All right, you are in control, so slow it down. Here are some ways you can do that. So your level 2 is in a hurry. You need to slow them down. That's fantastic. That means they are understanding English really well. So maybe you're in the colors unit and you know all of the colors. They even know gray and pink and purple and fuchsia. Well, that's awesome. Then have them find things around them that are that color. Do you have something that is yellow? I have something that is yellow. A bus. Do you have something that is yellow? Or if you don't think they have toys around them because, maybe it looks like they're in the kitchen, I have a marker. Or, have them look around and see what they can find. If they can't find anything, that's okay. Then ask them, what is something that is yellow that you know? And see if they can come up with something. If they're struggling, then you start throwing up props like crazy. The other thing that you can do, especially if they can read really well, if they're like, it is rainy in Britain. Every time I go to Britain, it is rainy. If they are saying sentences like that on their own, then start working on those conversation skills. Have you ever been to Britain? No. If you go to Britain, what do you want to see? Now, they may struggle with answering that, and that's okay because that's what the classes are for. So help them to answer that. If they're looking at you like, I don't know, I've never been there, I don't know what's there. Well, if you're in the Britain, hopefully they can at least tell you like Big Ben, or I would go by plane, or at least something related to what you've been working on. But you could say something like, oh, I want to go see the big clock. Do you know the clock? Big Ben? And again, if you're in the lesson, hopefully you have a picture of that. And then they can, yes. Oh, you want to go see Big Ben? And then help them make that sentence. I will go see Big Ben. Yeah. Those type of students I find I just need to get them started, give them examples, and then they just kind of take off. If you will slow down on the slides a little bit each time, you don't necessarily have to extend on each one. But if you will find places where you can naturally extend, then that's when you want to do that. If you find you're extending too much, because right when I started to extend, I was extending way too much. So then I had to kind of scale it back because I kept going I was going to the 28 minutes. And every once in a while that's fine, especially if you're working with a struggling student. But I'm really trying to keep it around that 25 minutes. Many of us don't need to know how to scaffold for the upper ones. That seems to come naturally, usually. If you are in the upper levels and they are doing really well, maybe you're in a simple lesson. For example, one of my students just started level 3, and it's the days of the week. Now they have added some more substance into that one, so I'm still enjoying it, but the first few slides of that one is, it is Sunday, it is Monday, it is Tuesday, it is Wednesday. And I have had some students, that's exactly what they needed, and no more. They needed just that. But then today, the one that just started it has been reading through most of his level 2 with me, And so I knew when we got to level 3, this was going to be perfect for him. So in those first few slides, I scaffold up. I was like, what day is this? And he was like, it is Sunday. And I was like, great. What is this? And we just went through all of the days of the week because he already knew them. Because he's a regular of mine, I knew that. If this was a new student, I might test it out. Circle another one and see if they already know that one. If they do, great. Then you can start working in some other skills you know that are coming up. Now, not at the beginning of that lesson, but with this particular student, we got towards the end of the lesson. He'd been doing amazing all the way through. And so at the end, this one was, I had some weather pictures, and you're supposed to say, it is Sunday and it's sunny, or whatever it is. It's a sunny day. Well, I know that later on in lesson 3, we're going to be, and at the end of lesson 2, that will be. So I worked in that sentence pattern that we're working on. It will be sunny. Right at the end of that. It was something that he was ready for since he was doing so well with everything else. So that's one way that I scaffold up, is to work in tiny little bits of things coming up. Now, if you're a brand new teacher, there's no way you're going to know that. So just come up with a sentence pattern that you think they will be able to handle. It doesn't matter if it's coming up in a lesson or not. Like maybe say, today it is rainy. Just add that one more extra word in there. That just shows them that sentences are flexible and you can still say the same information in different ways. Level 2 scaffolding could be as simple as just saying, my shirt is orange. Now, maybe you need to scaffold that up. Maybe they knew orange. My shirt is orange and white. Or add in other colors. Dino is yellow and brown. Well, on this one he is. Sometimes I'll pull out my actual doll and Dino is yellow and pink and red and black and white and brown and we stretch out that sentence. And doing it kind of silly like that, they always kind of giggle. And then they're like, oh, and then they'll find something next to them usually, or a picture on the screen, and they'll go, oh, the bus is yellow and black and red and, well, teacher, what color? Because they may not know silver. And so I'll teach them silver. There are many different ways to scaffold up and scaffold down for a lesson. Do you always need to do them? No, you do not. You need to pick and choose, and you don't need to do it on every single slide either. Even if a student that you normally scaffold up, on that particular skill, they might not need that. Maybe you scaffold up for part of the lesson, but you have to scaffold down on other parts of the lesson. Or maybe just this lesson, but the previous lesson, it was like pulling teeth, but he did great on this one. Or the next one. So you kind of have to be flexible and meet the student where they are. Of course, there are times with VIPKID, I'm not sure if other online companies have the same option, where you might want to mention that they need to go down a lesson or a unit or go up. I personally haven't done that yet because so far, mine haven't been so far from where they are that I felt like I needed to do that. I felt like that was just a little bit of work in class that I could slowly get them where they needed to be. And so far I've been able to do that. But you may not be able to do that. You may have gotten a student that is like way down here and they're way up in this upper level and they need to be down. Maybe they skipped or they missed or they understood at one point, now they don't. We don't know. So if you feel like the student is way far away, there's no way you can catch them up in class, then by all means, please suggest a level change. That's what it's there for. But understand that ultimately, it is up to the parents. So if the parents don't want to move them back down, then you have to work with what you have. And that's where scaffolding comes in as a great tool to keep you from being frustrated and to keep the student from being frustrated. You are the teacher. You change those slides how you need to change them. As long as they get those skills that they're supposed to be hitting, those target skills, the target vocabulary, then you're fine changing what you need to change. If you're worried about parent feedback, then just explain what you're doing. I noticed that Kelly was struggling with reading the sentences when we got to the grammar section. Since I wanted her to focus on grammar, I read the sentences and had her focus on just choosing the correct verb or whatever it is you're working on. So far, my parents have understood the reason. If you just explain why you did it, make sure you explain it clearly on why you did it. These are just some of the things you can do to scaffold up and scaffold down. I would love to hear your ideas. I'm always looking for new ways, as I'm always getting different students or my regulars are getting stuck in what we're doing. And so drop down in the comments below, how do you scaffold up? How do you scaffold down? What are some suggestions? Thank you for watching today. We'll see you next time. Bye.